The poet Robert Burns once wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, "The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry." Now, not many YouTube channels like this are going to start with a poem from 1785, but this is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. That's my closet, full of all the stuff that I love. And today, I had the best laid plans for this film. All the right elements were there. Did it go right or did it go awry? Let's check it out. Today's film is Flesh and Fantasy from 1943, a brisk 94 minutes long, beautiful black and white. This is a horror anthology film where we have a framing device and then we have 3 different stories being told. In this case, each one dealing with the themes of destiny and fate and whether or not we can escape either one of those. I'm a fan of these horror anthology films, even though they can be kind of hit and miss. I still enjoy them. I've talked about some before on this channel, like The Torture Garden and Dead of Night. Asylum is another one that I like. Tales from the Crypt, the film, is another one. This film actually precedes those. It's one of the very first horror anthology films. But to me, it's also the least successful of those. Now, all the elements were here when I got this film. All the elements of stuff that I like. For example, it's a horror anthology. I really don't think, even though it's billed as a horror anthology, that it has that much horror in it. It's more of mystery, suspense, even some romance thrown in there. It features one of my favorite actors, Edward G. Robinson, so that was working for me. It also has Barbara Stanwyck, who I've enjoyed in several films. It's directed by Julien Duvivier, who's a well-respected French director, and I really liked his film Panique quite a bit. And then one of the cinematographers was Stanley Cortez, and he worked on some wonderful films like The Magnificent Ambersons, Night of the Hunter, and 2 Samuel Fuller films, Shock Corridor and The Naked Kiss. So I was really pumped up to watch this film. That's why I got it. I thought, this is all the stuff that I like, all these elements. However, out of the 3 stories, only one really worked well, I thought. And it's story number 2. This is the one featuring Edward G. Robinson. A palm reader reads his palm at a party and tells him that he's going to commit a murder. Where Edward G. Robinson feels like, why would I ever do that? He's just a regular guy. But then he becomes more and more obsessed with the idea that he might commit a murder, that it's his destiny, and that he's fated to do that. I was watching this one and I thought, wow, compared to the first story in here, this one looks a whole lot different. It's on a whole other level. I wonder if Stanley Cortez was the one who was the cinematographer for this, because there's 2 cinematographers credited. And afterwards, I found out that yes, he was the one who shot this. And it looks great. It has some noir elements. It has some shadowy type things happening. The use of the high contrast and light and shadow. It's shot or takes place in London at least. So a lot of the London fog in some of these, and some surreal touches like Edward G. Robinson's reflections in the mirror and in windows talking to him. And I thought, wow, if the whole film had been like this story number 2 segment, my head would have exploded. It would have been 5 stars, no doubt. Instead, the film begins after the framing device with story number 1. This one kind of plays out like a Twilight Zone episode, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's about this girl who feels she's really homely, and there's this guy she really likes. So this mysterious mask maker during Mardi Gras in New Orleans makes her this beautiful mask, and she figures if she can talk to this guy with his mask on, maybe he'll fall for her. The guy's played by Robert Cummings, by the way. Visually, that first episode looks pretty good. It has some nice dreamlike touches, and the masks are pretty weird looking, which is good. Here's what ruins it. The musical soundtrack on that first story is horrendous. It's so bad. And, I've talked about how I feel about how they use music in some of these movies before. So it is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but in this episode, it's constantly jaunty, constantly upbeat, and never stops. And for an episode that's supposed to be kind of dreamy and weird, It's not moody. It's not low key. It's not atmospheric whatsoever. It's like it's a wrong musical score. Like they took a musical score from another film and stuck it in this episode. Or it's like there's something on in the background, like a radio, while you're watching this episode. You know, less is more with this stuff. I don't know why they felt compelled to have this music constantly going that is so inappropriate for the whole tone of that episode. And I had the subtitles on, the English subtitles, just because sometimes I do that. And at one point it described the music as whimsical orchestra music. Well, I don't do whimsy. I don't like whimsical stuff, whimsical characters, whimsical music, whimsical films. It's just not my jam, so it didn't work for me. Story number 3 is about a tightrope walker, and it's played by Charles Boyer. He's an interesting actor, and he has a recurring dream that he's going to fall, and when he falls, he sees this woman in the audience, and the woman is played by Barbara Stanwyck. This one is more of a kind of a romantic one, and it didn't really work that well. It's okay. Apparently a 4th story for this film was scrapped, and apparently the 4th story was supposed to have been a very good one. So that's all I know about that. But, you know, Flesh and Fantasy, disappointing. I'm going to give this one 2.5 books out of 5. Why books? That's the framing device. There's this one guy, and he's having these bad dreams, so his friend starts reading him these stories from this big book to help kind of ease his mind about fate and destiny and about dreams. So what's on this disc? This is a Vinegar Syndrome disc. I don't have very many of their discs, maybe 1 or 2. I'm not really into most of what they're putting out. I do like this cover. This is a nice slip cover because it's sturdier than most, and then has reversible art. So I put the original artwork on here instead of this artwork. The picture quality, it's cropped, so you're going to see black bars on both sides of the picture. So it's a square picture. The picture quality is okay. Sometimes it's quite good. Sometimes it's pretty blurry and some scratches in there. But I think my hunch is they didn't have a whole lot to work with, and this is probably the best that it would look, and that they cleaned it up quite a bit. And when you see the trailers that are on this disc, they look terrible. I mean, they're almost unwatchable. So, like I said, my hunch is that the film probably looked just as bad as those. So in that case, it's pretty good looking. There's a commentary track, which I did not listen to. There is a 1-hour feature about the director. That one's in French with English subtitles. I watched about half of it. Pretty informative, a little bit dry. Otherwise, you know, that's Flesh and Fantasy. Where can you see this? I don't know. I mean, it's pretty obscure. I had never heard of it up to this point, but because of all those things that I mentioned that I read about it and heard about it, I thought it was going to be a sure thing for me, so it's kind of disappointing. But you might be able to rent it somewhere. It's possible. So feel free to leave a comment or suggestion down below. As usual, I want to thank Michael and Tina for your comments, and also Sam. Thank you for commenting on an earlier episode, the one about Audie Murphy that I did, I think at least a year ago. That one is really popular for some reason. I was kind of surprised about that, but I'm always surprised about this. Leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. We're almost at our next goal of 450 subscribers. I think there's about 20 to go at this point. I want to thank our newest subscriber, Matthew. Thank you so much. Feel free to follow us on Letterboxd. That's free. Under the Kazdoy Closet. That is where I write about briefly other films that I'm watching that I don't talk about on this channel. And we have a new follower on Letterboxd, and that is Tommy. Thank you so much for that. And thank all of you for watching this episode. Hope you liked it. See you next time.